We're talking about a new AEW signing, AEW on Apple TV Plus, and Renee Pacquette. She wants in on AEW, but she doesn't know what type of role she has coming for her if she were to join. So I'm going to throw out the $1 million idea. You guys got to stay tuned for that. Let's talk about Malcolm Bivens first. Apparently, Malcolm Bivens is very well on his way to AEW, at least according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter. The belief amongst many people in NXT is that Stokely Hathaway decided not to re-sign with WWE so he can go to AEW. Now, that is actually great news in my opinion. I love managers. I love managers in AEW. If there's one thing that I think AEW just 100% always does better than WWE with, it is managers. Having a manager can get talent over. I love what they did with Jake the Snake, pairing him up with Lance Archer. Obviously, now there's some health issues that obviously get in the mix, but that obviously comes first and foremost. That's a priority, is health, good health. But nonetheless, managers in AEW are kick-ass. Malcolm Bivens going to AEW is great. You can put him literally with anybody. You can put him with Jade Cargill. Actually, mind you, I still think smart Mark Sterling is doing a wonderful job in that role. But if Jade wants to fire him and bring in Malcolm Bivens, Stokely Hathaway would be a great option for Jade Cargill. Plus, you got Swerve, you got Keith Lee, you got Dante Martin, who's going to be going solo for a bit. You got a lot of talent in AEW that could benefit from having a manager. And Stokely Hathaway is really, really good at being entertaining and fun. But when he needs to be serious, he can do that. And there's a lot of people on this roster that can benefit from it. So, hey, if Malcolm Bivens left WWE to go to AEW, he's going to be a great asset to AEW. And I'm curious to see what transpires with it. But we don't know just yet when the debut will be expected. Obviously, we got to wait a little bit of time because of the non-compete clauses. But it is something to keep in mind. So just pay attention to that. All right, guys. I want to talk about Renee Young, a.k.a. Renee Paquette. If you guys didn't know, she had recently spoke to Steve Fall of NBC Sports Boston. And I love this idea that I have. Now, basically, she was asked about joining AEW and more so on like an on-screen experience, right? Like in an on-screen capacity, what can we expect here? And I love this idea for Renee Paquette. If she were to join AEW, no, she should not be a commentator. No, she should not be a ring announcer. No, she should not be a backstage interviewer. There is only one thing that I want AEW to do if they were to bring in Renee Paquette. So, Renee, I know that your concern here, based on your interview with Steve Fall, is that, you don't want to do something that was familiar to what you did in WWE, which totally makes sense. Now, in the beginning days of AEW, they were doing press conferences. And first of all, press conferences, it totally works for AEW. It totally works for AEW. But not only that, AEW presents itself more like a sport. So when New Japan does press conferences, when the UFC or Bellator do press conferences, they are really, really good at allowing people the opportunity to speak and get their name out there and connect with an audience in a different way from a typical promo. What I would do is, if I was Tony Khan, I would hire Renee Paquette. And during the pay-per-views only, or special episodes of AEW on television, special episodes and pay-per-views, I would have Renee Paquette facilitate the official press conferences for the events. Not a media scrum. What I would do is stage an entire press conference. To me, AEW used to do this. They did this with Jake Hager in the beginning. I've always been interested in this. It gives it a more realistic approach. AEW, despite the fact that I disagree with the win-loss record and all of that stuff, they do it. Why not add to it? Why not make it feel more personable, more like a sport, more like an actual sport? Press conferences make a lot of sense. I would have Renee Paquette be the one to facilitate them. I would have Renee Young being the one to literally just carry this. It is something I think if AEW brings back and they treat it only for special purposes, it will feel special. So that way, when you do see Renee Paquette, she's going to feel special. If I'm AEW, that's what I would do. Not only is this good content for social media and the internet and YouTube and whatever streaming service they eventually go on to, but if you want to sell pay-per-views, you can do press conferences in the beginning, right? You can do them after the fact. That's what I would do if I was AEW. She would be interested in going to AEW, but she wants to do something different than WWE, and we all know WWE ain't doing no press conferences. So it's just something to consider. And now with that being said, I want to talk about AEW on Apple TV Plus. We spoke about AEW on Netflix just the other week. Now AEW stars such as Britt Baker, Christian Cage, Bryan Danielson, MJF, Powerhouse Hobbs, CM Punk, and Ruby Soho will all be featured in the upcoming season of Carpool Karaoke. And again, I cannot reiterate this enough. It doesn't matter what anybody here says in the comment section. You cannot change my mind. This is one area that I am not willing to have somebody try to change my mind and convince me that this is bad for not only pro wrestling, but bad for AEW. It is incredibly important as a fan that we get to see these wrestlers appear on other shows and appear in a different light. I genuinely believe not only will it help grow AEW's business, but it's exactly what WWE does. You see WWE stars everywhere. You need to see the same thing for AEW. You need to see the same thing for Impact. The more that you can cross-promote with these different avenues, not only helps your product, but I think it just allows wrestling fans to see these people in a different light. Yes, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, those names are probably known by a typical casual wrestling fan, right? Somebody who's flipped through the channels before. Oh, I remember CM Punk. I remember Daniel Bryan. But now, when you see them here on Carpool Karaoke, oh, what are they up to these days? A quick Google search tells you they're on AEW. Maybe that wrestling fan has an idea of possibly tuning into AEW now. Then it is up to AEW to help convert that fan into a fan for life. And honestly, it just makes a lot of sense for AEW stars to cross-promote, be on these different shows and whatnot. And who knows, maybe this leads to good relationships with Apple TV Plus. Just like I mentioned with the Netflix video. Like, things like this happening could very well open the door. Maybe AEW doesn't want their own streaming app. Maybe they don't want to go on HBO Max. By doing these type of things, they're opening doors for relationships with big companies. And obviously, Tony Khan's a billionaire, so that's not very difficult at all. But Apple TV Plus, I mean, there was rumors one point that Apple TV was very, very interested in WWE's television rights. You never know. Apple TV Plus is a really good streaming service. The thing that it lacks is a lot of content. And hey, maybe establishing that relationship with AEW can get AEW on Apple TV Plus one day. You never know what it could lead to, but that's why things like this are great. And again, I just don't think there's anybody out there who can change my mind. But altogether, it's a big win for pro wrestling. If it's a win for AEW, it's a win for pro wrestling. It's a win for WWE because that just shows that other companies, other production companies are willing to cross-promote and feature stars of wrestling companies. Something that doesn't seem very likely, but it is happening a lot more often now. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and I'll see you next time.